Thanks to the sharing economy, getting services like a haircut or a dog walker, they've never been easier. But critics say that tucked under all that convenience is a lack of regulation. While companies, including Uber, may have made it easier to get that ride, there have also been lawsuits, arrests, and new legislation as city officials across Canada and around the world scramble to keep up. Joining me to talk about the impact of this new sharing economy and what's on the line is Sunil Johal, Policy Director at the Mowat Centre. Sunil, thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure.
So when this first emerged, what seemed to happen was Uber would insert itself into a city that was ill-equipped to deal with it, and they figured, well, the legislation will catch up. Is that sort of the de facto way of doing business these days when a disrupting technology wants to enter the marketplace?
That's a very diplomatic way of putting it, but Uber certainly has been taking the view, let's set up shop, let's get market share, let's get people really happy with our services, and then let's let government regulators worry about catching up later. And I think the issue that this is really exposing is that governments take quite a bit of time to get rules up and running, whereas these tech companies move very quickly and don't really have the patience to wait for rules to be developed.
Now, there are those who would say, the established, entrenched, call them to the technologies or businesses, they would say that they are operating outside of the law, and how have they been able to get away with that, I suppose?
Basically because customers and consumers really like what they're doing. So, I mean, in the case of Uber, people weren't really happy with the existing cab industry. They found cabs slow, not particularly customer service oriented. So when you've got a stagnant market, coming in with something that's a better mousetrap is something that people are going to like and are going to be very happy with. So that's really how they're getting away with it, because they're coming up with better solutions.
So a lot of people would say, what's wrong with that?
That's a fair question. The issue is these cab companies and hotels are playing by the rules, and the rule books they're playing by are very thick. So if they've got 50 or 100 pages of rules to work with and Uber or Airbnb don't have any, it's really not a level playing field. So I think we want innovation in these types of spaces, but what's also important is that everybody who's trying to give cab rides or offer hotel services is playing by fair rules.
But is this then a regulatory issue? Is because a lot of customers would say, look, I am the end focal point of this thing. I'm happy. It is up to City Hall to get the gears moving faster so that we can give me and the hundreds of thousands of people like me what I want.
Absolutely, and the issue is, I mean, governments are all around us these days, making us safe, they would say, and many people might say, well, maybe you're making me a little too safe. So the question is, do we want governments playing that role, or on something like Uber, where I can see the rating of my driver? If I'm willing to take a risk to get into this car, that's on me. The issue is, if something happens to somebody taking an Uber, the first stop is going to be going to government and saying, why did you let this happen and why didn't you have stronger rules in place?
And is that really the biggest concern? And I think a lot of people watching who are big fans of the sharing economy would poo-poo that or downplay that risk. But is it a very real risk that needs to be taken seriously?
Absolutely. I mean, safety and health issues are very important in our society. So I think governments have a role to make sure that if companies are out there operating, they're keeping people safe. But there are also other issues. I mean, if you look at an Airbnb, if I bought a home in a residential neighborhood and all of a sudden my neighbor is letting out the house next to me to college kids every weekend, I'm not going to be happy because my neighborhood is zoned as residential, not as a commercial district. So it's not just health and safety, there are also quality of life issues that people are concerned about.
What about the issue for a city to be known as disruptor friendly? You know, Montreal, we just recently reported that a massive class action suit is about to take place in Montreal, where cab drivers are going after about $300 million in what they say is lost revenue from Uber coming into the city before they were regulated. Montreal has long tried to establish itself as a tech-friendly city, and I wonder what something like that could do reputationally to a city like Montreal that would say, well, you know, if disruptors not welcome.
When we're in a global marketplace where all cities and jurisdictions are fighting for investment, so if you're a place like Pittsburgh, which is letting Uber test its self-driving cars on their streets right now, you're setting a standard that, hey, if you want to innovate, Pittsburgh's the place to go. So cities have to weigh off, yes, we want health, safety, and fair rules, but we also are competing with a lot of other cities that are trying to attract these businesses to their locations.
Lastly, just looking at the trend line generally, are cities becoming a little more nimble, a little more adept at dealing with these things? Can these regulations be looked at and changed perhaps a little faster than they used to?
I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing seeing cities have been forced to move more quickly, and I think that's a good thing. I think the next time a disruptive technology comes along, Toronto, Montreal will be better equipped to deal with it thanks to their experience grappling with companies like Uber.
Sunil Johal from the Mowat Centre, thank you very much for being here this morning.
Thanks, Ben.